If you're a big swim team and you like to order a lot of gear, maybe you ought to check out Swim Outlet Team Division for these reasons. Swim teams receive a 10% discount on bulk orders. Swim teams or organizations get an 8% commission on referred sales. You'll also like their customization services, which is affordable and available at all times during the year for all team gear. With over 50,000 items in stock, you can get most anything you want. Swim Outlet Team Division. You need to try it out. You'll be glad you did.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Morning Swim Show for Wednesday, October 29th, 2014. I'm your host, Jeff Cummings. If you're a subscriber to Swimming World Magazine, you've been a part of an amazing series of articles that have been in our magazine in 2014 called Triumphs and Tragedies. Chuck Warner is going to be our guest today in the Phoenix Monitor, and he's the author of that series. Starting in January, he's been listing the top 10 triumphs and tragedies in the history of swimming. People like Michael Phelps, Mark Spitz, are just a few of the names that he's been profiling in this amazing series. And in November, he talks about the cancellation of the Olympics during World War II. To learn more about his Triumphs and Tragedies series, we have Chuck Warner in the Phoenix Monitor right now from New Jersey. Coach, it's good to see you again. How are you?
I'm good, Jeff. How are you?
Doing excellent, thank you. This has been a great series of articles in Swimming World Magazine talking about the highs, I guess, and the lows of swimming. We've talked about Michael Phelps and Mark Spitz, and in November it's going to be the cancellation of the Olympics. I guess that would be one of the lows. And you also talked about 1996 Olympics and China's alleged doping that kind of came from the '94 World Championships. How did you go about selecting these 10?
Oh boy, you know, I just thought through it a little bit. The idea actually came from Dana Kirk, Tara Kirk's sister. And Tara, of course, had the situation, I think it was 2008, where she was third at trials and Jessica Hardy got bumped out because of positive test. And Tara never got to swim, and Dana said, you know, maybe you should write a series about that. So I just started thinking about all the things that have come up in swimming history. And it's kind of interesting to me to see the big highs and the big lows and things that have happened that have changed and steered the sport over the course of the last 100+ years.
Then obviously ranking them is probably the toughest part, not just coming up with a list of 10, but ranking them. How do you put someone like Mark Spitz at number 10, I believe is where you had him, and where people will probably say he's probably the biggest story of swimming. How do you go about ranking them?
Well, we didn't do a Swimming World panel with a lot of people having input, and if anybody has a disagreement over my ranking, they're welcome to do that, but really more intuition and a gut feeling. You know, for example, number 3, World War II. It's not something that I think a lot of people have thought about, but we had this span from the 1936 Olympics in Berlin all the way to 1952 in Australia, in Melbourne, I think it was, where there was the world was never together in swimming. You know, World War II lopped off 1940, 1944, and then in 1948 the Japanese weren't allowed to come to the Olympics because of their participation in World War II. So swimming really had 16 years there where there was no time that everyone came together. And I just think a lot of people that don't look back carefully at history miss some of those big peaks. So a lot of it was just gut and intuition.
And of course, there are probably a lot of swimmers who lost out on that chance of being an Olympic gold medalist, an Olympic medalist, or just competing in the Olympics because of that. Were there any big names that lost out on that chance?
Well, you know, one of the really great stories out of that, out of the 1940 games being canceled, was Esther Williams was a potential Olympian. And because the Olympics were canceled, she went off, and I think she was working in a department store. And one of the other great names in swimming or in movies in those days, I want to say Helen Hayes, but that's the wrong name, she couldn't make a certain shoot. And so Esther Williams got to go and sub for her, and then became discovered, and then made this huge series of movies. So I guess it wasn't all tragedy. It was situations like that where she turned it around into a triumph for her herself.
A lot of these other issues, ones on the list, like you mentioned, Michael Phelps and Mark Spitz. Obviously, these are stories of people that people in the current swimming community know very well. And obviously, you know, when you have to write these things, there's a lot of research in it. Have you discovered in any of your research things that you were like, I never ever would have known about this kind of thing?
Well, yeah, you know, and that's really the fun of doing this, as long as you have the time to do it. The 1994 situation of the World Championships with the Chinese, I just never realized how that unfolded. And I had heard some people talk about it before, and I'm still sworn to secrecy over some of the things that happened around between the World Championships and the Olympics in 1996 in Atlanta. And actually, Jeff, what happened, or one of the things that happened, was somebody sent to me a book that was written by a young woman in China that laid out her entire life and career as a swimmer there. And it was never published because she was afraid of the backlash that would happen. But it was just horrific, taking a look inside this life of a swimmer that is seen as a representative for the state as opposed to an individual person. And I think starting to appreciate, or it's helped me appreciate America more, where we do value an individual's independence and humanity, where in some countries you're more just a missionary for what the state wants to do.
Right. Well, you've written a couple books that have obviously required immense research. 4 Champions, 1 gold medal, which talked about that amazing lead up to the 1500 freestyle at the 76 Olympics, I believe. And then the book behind you on your left shoulder, And Then They Won Gold, which talks about some of the amazing swimmers and the interactions with their coaches over the years. You know, obviously, like you said, you were talking about the Chinese is giving you a different appreciation of swimming in the United States. I would imagine all this research gives you a better appreciation of the journey that the sport of swimming itself has taken in these past 120, 150 years.
Yeah, you know, and I was thinking about our conversation today, and something you and I have never talked about is the fact that I feel like I grew up or have had a life in swimming that's been a little bit like a Forrest Gump, you know, the old character from the movie that stumbles upon all these periods of history. That I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut, where the founder or co-founder was the late coach, great Peter Daland, found Swimming World magazine. And in the Yale heydays, I grew up swimming in front of 2,000 people in that Yale natatorium at the Yale Carnival, and seeing Don Scholander walk in and out of the pool every day when I was going in and out. And I landed in California for college in 1971 to 75, right at the same time George Haynes was coming to UCLA, Mark Schubert was coming to Mission Viejo, Peter Daling was at USC, Dick Jokums was building Long Beach Swim Club, and then I got a phone call to go to Texas to coach with Eddie Reese when he moved from Auburn. So I feel like I've kind of lucked my way through a lot of things in the history of swimming. Really,
yeah, absolutely. This has been an amazing journey that you've had. You've got to be really blessed to be able to be a part of all that, and it's probably as if kind of influenced a lot of the writing that you've done.
Yeah, it does. You know, the first book just started with this idea of why weren't we good anymore in the mile, and then you started to realize, or I did, how much good it was doing for people. Just the notes and the emails and the conversations, just unbelievable when you put yourself out there as a servant to the sport of swimming. What comes back to you is way more than you could ever give.
Well, I know you can't tell us what the #1 triumphant tragedy is, and I actually don't want you to tell us. I want to wait for the surprise reveal in our January 2015 issue. But is it just kind of give us a little bit of a hint of what we can expect from that one?
Oh boy, I don't know how much I can, or else I would just divulge it. But I just think if you look back, you see these big swings of these great moments. I will tell you that #2 I looked at as the greatest triumph in the history of swimming, and really enjoyed writing that story and trying to put into words, the written word, what that feels like or what that is like. And unfortunately, the #1 I saw as the opposite, and so it's a sad story. And, but I think within every one of these stories, there really is some element of triumph, and there really is some element of tragedy. So even in that number one story, although there's a great deal of sadness to it, I think there'll be some triumph in it as well.
Yeah, was an interesting pick for you, because you probably didn't want to end this series on a low note at all, did you?
Well, when I first started thinking about the whole series, I immediately thought that was the number one. That was the number one triumph and tragedy in the history of swimming. And one of the things that you hope, or I hope, that I do with what I'm writing, and I'm sure you do with the Morning Swim Show, is to make a difference and make a contribution to swimming. So if someone wants to argue about whether or not it's the number 1 or 2 or 5 or 10, that's fine. What I'm trying to do with the writing for Swimming World is to capture some of swimming history in a short enough, readable enough presentation so that a boy like me at 12 years old, or a girl like my daughter at 16 years old, can get interested and excited and learn about some of the things that have happened. I actually saw our new swimming president, U.S. swimming president, in Jacksonville at the American Swimming Coaches Association clinic, and he said he really appreciated reading the story about the Chinese and the whole drug culture, because a lot of people haven't read something like that or known something like that in a biteable 1,800 words.
Yeah.
So I hope in a short snapshot we're able to contribute to everybody's appreciation for how we got where we are today.
Well, you piqued my interest. I can't wait to see what number 2 and number 1 are. I kind of have ideas in my head, but there's so many stories that are triumphs and tragedies, and every story demands to be told. But I'm sure these are going to be 2 that everybody agrees with, or definitely belong on the list.
Right. I think we could probably go back and do a summary of another 10 just that we missed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Well, Chuck, before we let you go, we want to submit you to the final 5. These are 5 questions we asked our guests on the show. So I'm going to ask you the first question, which is, which swimming celebrity would you like to trade lives with for a day?
One day I'd be happy to be Michael Phelps for a day.
Okay. And which non-swimming celebrity would you like to trade lives with for a day?
Derek Jeter.
Now, Derek Jeter post-retirement, or Derek Jeter when he was playing baseball?
Well, Derek Jeter, throw me back at least a few months.
Okay, that would be cool. Besides this current year, what's a year of your life you would like to relive?
Oh boy, not this current year. I like what I heard someone say once, that if your last 2 years aren't the most interesting and exciting of your life, then something's wrong. Mine certainly have been. 1978, the year my mother passed away. I would do a couple things different.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. What's your favorite movie, Chuck?
Oh boy, Jeff. Favorite movie. Chariots of Fire used to be a favorite back in the old days. These days, Internship. Changes in Careers. I love that movie.
Internship. Okay. Well, it's kind of funny because Chariots of Fire has been a very common movie that's been listed lately, so it's very interesting to hear that. But very inspirational too. All right, last question for you. What's your favorite season?
Oh boy, swim season all year long. I love the fall. I'm sitting here on an autumn day in New Jersey, and it's just a beautiful time when you can have your sunny, warm days, but you see the leaves change, and it's a wonderful time of year. But any time of year is great to be here.
You're right. Well, Chuck, thanks so much for joining us today, and we're anxious to see how this Triumph and Tragedy series plays out the rest of these last 3 issues.
Great to be on the Jeff Cummings Show. Thanks for having me on, Jeff.
No problem. See you later, Chuck.
Bye.
All right, so that's going to do it for this edition of the Morning Swim Show. Now, if you're a subscriber to Swimming World Magazine, you will get the November issue, and you will see Chuck write about number 3's Triumphs and Tragedies, and you will know what number 2 and number 1 are. If you're not a subscriber, go to swimmingworld.com so you can make sure to not miss the remaining issues in this series. I'm Jeff Cummings. Thanks for watching.